Welcome back to Nabity on Business. I'm Dave Nabity, and yeah, I know before we get started, I look different. I just had my 46th wedding anniversary, and one of the gifts I gave my wife is I shaved my goatee. I know. Everybody tells me I don't look as good as when I have a goatee. So I'm trying to get the marriage thing fixed, and then I'll grow this thing back. So just stay tuned for that. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about a subject you're going to probably roll your eyes on, estate planning. But I'm going to go down a road that you aren't going to hear a lot of people talk about that I think is going to be essential if you want to keep from making big mistakes on your estate plan. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with some good content for you. All right, today I want to talk to you about estate planning. A lot of people think about estate planning. The first thing that goes through their mind is I got to find an attorney. I got to go in and tell them all about my kids and my family and my assets, and let's split it all equally and get it all done and go away and life is good. That's especially a bad idea if you run and own and operate a company, because most of the time in most estates, it's the business that's a driver for everything else. It's the business that kicks off the income that allows you to buy other assets, real estate, other businesses, those sorts of things. The business is what drives the payroll and gives you the money to put in your checkbook every 2 weeks. I like to think of it like a cow that you've got that produces milk. And it's a sacred cow because it's producing a lot of milk. You're able to take some of that milk and live off of it. You're able to take some of that milk and sell it. And you save enough of the milk that's coming out, you can buy another cow. And then you can buy another cow. The engine for your economy is often your business. And so doing estate planning with a business, it's a whole different animal. If you have liquid assets in a brokerage account at Schwab, and you have your home, and you've got just some basic assets, then a basic estate plan makes sense. But when it comes to building a company and then trying to figure out how to transfer it, it's a whole nother animal. So the first thing that I want to say is, before you think about what your estate plan should look like, I want you to think about what your succession plan should look like. Who am I going to give the stock to when I die? Who's going to be the CEO? Who's going to have control? Who's going to have the voting shares? Do I only allow my stock to go in the hands of those kids that are active in the business? Or do I allow stock to go to everybody? Maybe I got 5 kids. Maybe 2 of them are in the business. But boy, you feel like you got to be fair, so everybody gets the same thing. That kind of a thinking makes big mistakes. And unfortunately, a lot of the professional advisors will let you go ahead and do that. But I want to give you some basic fundamentals. First of all, when it comes to transferring a business to the children, my fundamental is you only allow stock in the hands of those that are active at operating and running the company. If you have an estate worth $1 and the business is worth 50 cents, and you've got other children that are not active in the business, you need to take the other 50 cents that's not business-based and use that to equalize the estate, but not let the company be shared by a bunch of people that aren't active in it. What ends up happening, it's fine while mom and dad are alive, but when mom and dad are gone, the war begins, and many times the non-active kids want the business sold because they feel like the business is worth a lot, and they pull the rug right out from under the kids that are active in the business and the ones that are growing it. So that's one thing that you need to think about. And a part of the problem that you have with kids as well is some of the kids feel entitled, so they don't work very hard. Some of them have an attitude that, look, I've got this job, it's my right, I might as well keep it. And they don't perform even like people that are non-family members, and yet they expect the wealth of the business. That could be a big problem. In many businesses where parents aren't careful, there's a nepotistic, I don't know if you can say it that way, but there's nepotism, where the parents give kids a great paycheck and they give them a great title, but they aren't performing like non-family members. And if they went to work for anybody else, they'd end up getting paid a lot less money. You can also have situations where the kids never worked for anybody but mom and dad. And so when they come into the business, they haven't proven themselves anywhere else. And they end up not having the discipline and the skills necessary to deliver and perform and earn the respect of the other people in the organization. And, you even get into things where kids get so lazy and so sloppy, they're not even presentable as an adult. They don't cut their hair. The clothes they wear are frumpy. You couldn't take them into a bank or a lending institution and ask them to put together a deal to change your line of credit because they don't present very well as an adult. So you can have all those kinds of things going on within a family-run company, and you got to get ahead of all of that first before you start looking at building an estate plan. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of companies that'll do that. If you walk into most lawyers' office, they'll look at the family, they'll look at the assets, they'll help you put the documents together. They won't tell you that your kid that comes in at 9 and leaves at 4 and is way unhealthy in their lifestyle and making terrible personal life choices, they won't tell you that kid should not be on the payroll. I've actually had a company where one of the kids wanted to travel the world and thought that if they went into a coffee shop in Germany with a laptop computer, they could open it up, they could communicate with people back in Nebraska, and they would be able to earn their $150,000 a year. I'm not kidding. I see these kinds of things in family-run businesses all the time. So step number 1 in doing estate planning is studying the family dynamic, looking at what's going on with the kids, getting an idea of whether these kids have the potential for being successors. That's the first thing. Do they have the potential? The second thing is, are they ready? And the third thing is, what management team do I need to make sure sticks around to make sure the company runs and operates properly until my young family successors are able to work their way up into being in a good CEO position. So the succession plan is the first thing that's got to get worked out. So please don't do a personal estate plan if you have a business without having the succession plan in place. And once we get an idea where we want the company stock to go, where we want the other assets to go, who's active, who's not active, then you can begin to build the estate plan. And one of the big things you want to do is try to avoid estate tax. Now, estate tax can take 40% of everything that you own, husband and wife, above $30 million. So you might say to yourself, well, I'm under that limit today. My estate's worth $25 million. And you're reinvesting a lot of money in that company. Pretty good chance that company's going to grow by 8-10% a year. Well, guess what? In 10 years, you're going to have a $50 to $75 million estate. And the estate taxes on that could be $30 million. If you don't do it right. So it's really important to get a handle on what the valuations of the company are and to get a good forecast on whether or not you're going to have estate taxes down the road. There aren't a lot of firms that do it. And so one of the things our firm does, the first thing we do is we get all your financials and we put together what we think is a good business valuation. Then we get all of your personal assets and we look at everything. Personal assets, business assets, real estate. What do you have that's liquid? What does your debt look like? And we try to come up with a realistic picture of what your net worth looks like today and what it's going to look like 10 years from now, so we know what kind of an estate tax problem we're going to have. If we do have a big estate tax problem and you've got your succession plan built so we know what's going to happen with the business, then we can look at strategies where we're gifting stock or selling stock to trusts and getting the stock out of our estate so that if it goes from 50 or maybe 25 million to 50 or 75 million in 10 years, we can push that growth out of the estate and try to keep the estate under the level that it'll be taxed. And it takes a lot of analysis. It takes a lot of time. You have to be strategic about it. That's one of the things we do. There aren't a lot of firms that do it. And I don't know that I've seen a law firm or a CPA firm do it. So we try to provide the management information you need to be able to really chart this out and make good decisions. Now, last thing I want to talk to you about is stewardship. I really believe, you've heard me say this before, but I really believe that if God's allowed you to become a wealthy business owner, that is something that you should steward. And it means that you don't give your money to just anyone that's in the family. It means that you need to look at what the end result of that money might be and ask yourself the question, is this money being managed and carefully taken care of, or is it being thrown down the toilet because I've got somebody that's going to inherit it that's going to misuse it, maybe use it for alcohol, use it for drugs, use it for social programs that you wouldn't accept by any means. Perhaps they have a nice trust fund and they get married to somebody that is just a manipulator, and they know that child has this trust fund, so they do everything they can to get their fingers into that money, and then they just squander it. Stewardship is really, really important. And that comes back now to this succession planning and the estate planning, and having a really good sense of what the situation looks like with the children. Are my children in a position to where I know that if I leave them a good estate, that they're going to manage it properly? And if the answer is no, then you need to build your estate plan so that you can take care of the basics of the kids that you love. But when it comes to the wealth that you've built, it needs to either be directed in the hands of those that will steward it properly, or you need to think about charitable trusts and charitable foundations. When you think about it, the money that you've made, it was all here on the planet before you got here. You happened to jump into business and get to a place where you could capture a bunch of that revenue, put it to work in your business. 100 years from now, nobody's going to know that you were on the planet, and that money that you worked so hard to build, it's going to be off somewhere else. You have to think about, if God's allowed you to accumulate what you have now, what kinds of decisions could you make so that if you're sitting at the conference room in heaven and you're sitting down having a conversation with the Lord, and they're looking at all the gauges and all the computer screens of where your money went after you went to heaven, you want to make sure that the story that shows up on those monitors says that money went to do this, and boy, did that do good. And that money went to do that, and boy, did that do good. And you don't want the picture to be a drug-addicted, lazy person sitting there collecting the coupons off of the money that you've accumulated just so they can squander it on bad choices in their personal life. You want the computer screen to say you gave the money to these people and they tripled and quadrupled it. You allowed the money to go into this program and you fed thousands of people, and you made a big difference in the lives of people who didn't get a fair shake at the start of their life. You want to be a good steward of what you're doing. That's one of the things that we really try to do, is to help you sort through what's the right thing to do with this money. It's not about just having the trust. It's not about just having the estate plan. It's not just about having the succession plan. Did you do the right thing with the money? You know what? In some cases, it's your employees. We've got clients that'll say, look, I could do a lot of things with this money, but I'm going to sell my business to my employees. I have 200 of them. They all have families. They all need to be cared for. If I sell this business to a national consolidator and I make a bunch of money and I walk away, who knows how many of the 200 are going to get fired? And, what sort of economic and marriage damage that could do to my people. You know what? The best thing I could do from a stewardship standpoint is to turn this business over to my employees, to allow them to carry on the legacy. I'm pretty convinced if you have that kind of mindset, when you're at the conference table in heaven and they're sitting down and they're watching the tape, the story will be a good story. We got a question that came in, and there's somebody that has a business that they're thinking about selling to a private equity or national consolidator. And they ask the question, what do I need to think about? Well, the first thing is what sort of damage is that going to do to your company and your people? And you can't control all of that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you need to have a good assessment of what the chain reaction and what potential calamity could occur if you sell to a national firm that has all the same administration you have. They have all the same servicing operations. They have all the same sales divisions that you've got, so they can fire half your employees and make a lot of money. Is that really a good thing to do? And then so you might say, well, geez, what about the money? If I sell, I'm going to get 50% more for my stock than I would get if I sold to somebody over here. I just ask the question, do you need the money? Do you really need the money? Well, you might say, well, geez, if I have that extra money, look at all the additional charitable things that you can do. And here's what I like to say about that. You have people that are in your orbit. Perhaps God put them in your orbit for a reason. A lot of the people that work for you, they might have come from split homes. Their father could have ditched them. You might be the only father figure they have in their life. You might have been the only mentor, the person that really helped them grow into the professional that they are today. What do you suppose it'll do to their heart if you sell to a company for extra money and then half of them get fired? I don't know. You got to really think about that. I think the people piece of it is a big, big deal. So what I like to do is say, okay, what's your net worth look like now? What will it look like when you sell? What's the difference? Okay, if you sell to somebody else that might pay you less, you're going to be okay? You're going to be able to do all the things that you want to do? If you get a little bit less, but everybody stays put, and the new buyer is going to honor the commitment that you've had to your people, we'll help you look and see what the economics look like on one side or the other, so you can make a good decision, but you can also put in the mix a good people decision. And you got to ask yourself, how much is enough? Really? I mean, if you get an extra $2, $3, $4 million on a business that's worth 20 and half your employee group gets fired, did you really need the extra money? I mean, we got to think about that sort of thing. Now, there are cases where it's a no-brainer that you got to sell for the higher amount of money. But to do it without having this kind of a conversation, I think is a mistake. Well, that wraps up this episode of Nabity on Business. We'll be happy to get together with you at the office and visit and learn a little bit about you and your business, and maybe set the stage to be able to do some work together. So go to Nabity.com and you can connect with us there, or you can call our office at 402-391-0222. Give me a call. Let's talk about it.